back color, bring back color, bring back color to tree. Sweetest are the leaves that Rangoon beam, sacred are the trees of Miami. Yarraga bringing rain from Ubi Ubi. Flowers bloom again and again. Yarraga gently the east wind blossoms all around over plains of dust. Men bring back the flowers to their home, to their home, to their home. Knew a big brown bear with a pretty pink bow in her hair, and she too had a soft place in her heart for a honeybee, but she couldn't find the words to say. You sweeten up my day. And Mr. B was hard to pin down, always buzzing around over here and there. Had a lot on his plate, always buzzing around the place. He didn't have time anyway. She bought a new blue dress and red high heels to wear to the ball in the forest, hoping to see that busy little bee. And he would say she looked lovely. He turned up later there in a yellow cummerbund and pollen all on his legs and hair. Didn't think that he would, but he popped in 'cause he should. He didn't see it coming, but she was cooking up something. Then she said, please, oh please, Mr. B, won't you come and dance with me? I need and I love your honey. Bought a new dress just to impress you. They danced all night and stared into each other's eyes. A bear in blue and a bee right by her side. Nature doesn't work that way, does she? But arm in wing their dances, bear and bee. beneath my feet dissolves into red country, and I'm right where I belong. My head filled with the song, Dirty War. Water birds circling high, painted tracks through the sky, and the water beneath them hides Mangi for all the tribes we share, and care for others there. Oh, my mind taking me there, Dirty War. Yan man bala gurngau ngahilili, ilang ngari 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 ngar puranga, girngenga kaki kaki, nyan man nge burunganda thandu himali, Buddha leaves cleansing country, white and pure swirls around, breathing in, taking country, as she holds you in her loving arms. Oh, I dream my love, Dirty War, Dirty War, Dirty War, Dirty War, Dirty War. My head filled with the song of Dirty War. Gayara gide, yulu wiri gir. Yulu wiri gir. Gayara gide, yulu wiri gir. Ganda. Neya mawugi deima. Gayara gide, yulu wiri gir. Gayara gide, yulu wiri gir. Ganda. Nama ya warigi. Gayara gide, yulu wiri gir. Gayara gide, yulu wiri gir. Ganda. Nama ya warigi. Gayara gide, look over this way, yulu wiri gir. Opal rainbow. A bit cheeky singing that song. It's about finding an opal. I learnt from the best of them. My dad had opal fever anyway. Pick up stone, don't let anyone know that you bent over and picked it up. because you got to split it however many ways that are there. Now you lick it and put it to the sun, and hopefully all those colours jump out at you, and then you put it in your pocket, walk away real cool. And just let it stew, and then, you know, walk down Main Street of Lightning Ridge a week later and they'll say, there she goes, she's a millionaire now. Oh, to all the old ones, all the grey and the slow ones, dear, I feel you dear to me. Oh, to all the old ones, all the here and the gone ones, dear, I feel you dear to me. And you wash away the time to place your hand in mine. Oh, to all the old ones, all the buried long gone ones, to the ones that we come from, dear, I feel you near to me. Wash away the time to place your hand in mine. Whisper soft against my ear. All the teachings of the Lear. Dusk becomes dawn. I know where I'm from. River and stone, never alone. Oh, to all the old ones, all the grey and the slow ones, to the buried long gone ones, to the ones that we come from.
Nardi Simpson. Nardi Simpson. Oh, you are an absolute legend. So lovely to share the stage with you here at Belvoir Street Theatre. How did that? Have you performed here before?
Not like this, nah.
Neither have I. I feel like our lives have led to this moment where we can be in front of you for something so important. Can you please give Nardi Simpson a big round of applause? And Nardi is going to join us on the panel. My name is Narelda Jacobs. I'm a Whadjuk Noongar woman from Uluru, Perth, living and working on Gadigal country. And every day I pay my respects to the ancestors and elders for allowing me to walk on their country. And one of those giants whose shoulders I stand on is with us tonight. Can you please welcome to perform a welcome to country? Please put your hands together for Aunty Norma Ingram.
Yedadu Marang. Okay. Yedadu Marang. I'm Aunty Norma Ingram. Yama, everybody. I'm a Wiradjuri woman from Midwest New South Wales on the Lachlan River, or the Gallia River. And I was born and raised on the Aboriginal reserve there called Urambi under what we would call the Aboriginal Welfare Act, where our lives were totally controlled by the New South Wales state government. That's my mother's traditional land, and it's Wiradjuri. And my mother moved down to Sydney when I was quite young, so Redfern, and I'm still in Redfern. So that's Gadigal country. So I just want to pay my respects and acknowledge that where we are now, we're on the traditional land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. So the Eora Nation is bounded by the Hawkesbury River, the Nepean River and the Georges River. So the Gadigal is one of 29 small clan groups. They are saltwater, sunrise people. So they see that sunrise first thing when it comes up in the morning. We have across this country over 200 different Aboriginal nations. And I just imagine 65,000 years, my friends, that we have been practicing culture in this country with Aboriginal people. And it's handed down from generation to generation, our culture. And it just amazes me how we are still so strong after 65,000 years. We are still so strong in who we are as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people and who we are in our practices and what we've got to share to the rest of Australia, probably to the world, but to the rest of Australia. And all you need to do, my friends, is listen. We have a word called ningana, is listen. Because we must have been doing something right after 65,000 years, and we are still here, so proud and so strong in who we are and our culture. We are, unfortunately at the moment, we are only 3% of the Australian population. So that means that there's 97% of all of our other Australians. And that's going to be important later on with the talk that we have here this evening. So when we look, I as an Aboriginal elder, when I do Aboriginal Welcome to Country, what I'm doing is I'm opening up my heart and my soul, my values, and who I am as an Aboriginal person. So I'm handing this gift to you as our fellow Australians, if you like. I'm handing this gift to you. So I have to trust that you will treat it, you will respect it, as we Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people do in this country, and that we've been carrying it through. Because I know in my own heart as an Aboriginal elder, so you can call me Aunty Norma if you like, because our Aboriginal elders are respectfully referred to as aunt or uncle. But I have to trust as an Aboriginal elder that I am giving this to you. I'm opening up all of who I am. But welcome to country is not just about saying we welcome you to Mother Earth. Welcome to country is that we welcome you to us, Aboriginal people, and who we are, and our history, and our values, and everything else that we have to offer to everybody in Australia. And I just do have to acknowledge our elders, because it's so important we walk on, the shoulders of our ones who've gone away, the ones who've passed away. I'm the youngest of 11 children, and there's only 2 of us left now, 2 sisters who are left. So you can imagine all of that beautiful, beautiful history and beautiful culture that's there wherever they are, as we say, in our dream time. But I know they are looking after us, and that's another thing that we do as Aboriginal Welcome to Country. It's about giving us all safe passage on this ancient, ancient lands. And you've got to feel it. If you don't feel it, take your shoes off. Stand at Mother Earth, whether you're standing on the sand, whether you live at Bondi or wherever it is, and you're standing on that sand and you're standing on the green grass and you're standing on Mother Earth. You will feel it, my friends. You will feel it. So that's what it's all about. So I just want to welcome you all to Gadigal country tonight. Enjoy your evening. And as I always say, with our stories, our songs, our artwork, you look at that and you know it's Aboriginal culture. You can see it's Aboriginal culture. And so with Nadia's beautiful performance, and thank you, Nadia, she's telling a story. She told you the story about the opal. So those things are with us all the time that we continue to share with you. Have a great evening. Listen to some truths, because that's what it's all about. Enjoy and go home and tell your families and your friends. You know what I like to do? I like to challenge you to say, you go home to your family and your friends and you challenge them to know what the truth is in this country. So enjoy your evening.
Thank you, Aunty Norma. Thank you so much for that beautiful welcome to country. Yes, help Aunty Norma get down the steps, please. She's royalty. We've got royalty in the house. Nardi, you are on the stage, ready to go. Can I please get you to put your hands together for our other panellists? It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you highly esteemed Tony McAvoy SC, a Wirdi man who, among many of his achievements, was Australia's first Indigenous QC. Welcome, Tony. You can have that microphone. And lastly, put your hands together for Jade Ritchie. Jade is a Garang woman and a renowned spokesperson for the Yes campaign. And Nardi, I didn't get to introduce you properly. You are a Uwalarai storyteller, a founding member of the band Stiff Gins. Who remembers the Stiff Gins? You're still performing with the Stiff Gins, aren't you?
Still kicking.
Yes, awesome. You're an accomplished composer, a playwright, an educator and public speaker. Your debut novel, Song of the Crocodile, was longlisted for the 2020 Stella Prize and the Miles Franklin Award and was winner of the ALS Gold Medal. So can you please thank our panel? Now, Jade, you've just come off the back of a huge weekend. You just flew in to Sydney this morning. What have you been up to this weekend?
Is this on? Yep. So I actually live in Darwin and it's August. So as you know, the Northern Territory is the place to be in August. So if you haven't booked tickets already, get up there. Because we've come through Gama, we've got the Aboriginal Art Fair, that was just this weekend, and I was in a play. So for the first
You're no stranger to a stage then, obviously.
Well, I did kind of swagger in here as this is my new home. But no, I've never been in a play before. But the reason I was in the play was because Marcia Langton wrote part of the script. So just nodding to Ruby, it was amazing to bring Marcia's words to life last night. Really, really beautiful. So it was a play called I'm With Her. If it comes to your area, go and see it. And yes, I got off stage a few hours before I hopped on the red eye.
So you flew in a plane here, and when we see this icon, the graphics, we saw it on a plane recently. Today, it was unveiled. You had a conversation with Alan Joyce, a year ago? Can you tell us what the conversation was?
Look, I'm absolutely claiming it. We're really, really excited. Yeah, really, really excited that there was an announcement today that Qantas are increasing their support of the Yes 23 campaign, and you will see 3 of their aircraft with our logo. I am claiming it because about a year ago I sat next to Alan Joyce, and look, he wouldn't know who I am, but I did say to him, I had a little bit of Dutch courage and said, hey, wouldn't it be great if you put the logo on a plane? And I'm almost certain that he's been thinking about that discussion for a year. And it's happened. And if Jane from Virgin is watching, there's space for you too.
Tony, have you had conversations with people like that?
No, I end up in court fighting about things and doing boring things. It's very, very difficult to pick up the discussion straight from Jade. I'm sorry.
Well, look, we've got a whole hour, so you'll make your mark in people's minds in the next hour's worth of discussion. Now, you would have seen advertised that there is somebody that is not present on the stage, and she has given us this message. So when you listen to the reasons why Rachel Perkins not here, then you will completely understand. But here's Rachel Perkins.
Hello, and sorry I can't join you in Sydney tonight. I've had to go back to the Northern Territory for a funeral, but I just wanted to sincerely thank you for coming out tonight and giving us your time. This is the most important moment, I think, of our generation for Indigenous Australians and our fellow Australians to come to terms with the history of our country. And Indigenous people, we're only 4% of the population, under 4%, but cannot do this on our own. We need you to stand by us in this moment and recognise the deep history of this country, and also allow us to have a voice by standing beside us, ensuring that we will be listened to into the future by Parliament and government when they make laws and policies about us. This is what Indigenous people have asked for. More than 80% of Indigenous people over many years have supported this, and now's the moment to stand beside us and make sure we achieve this long-held aspiration. So have a great night tonight, and sorry I can't be there with you.
Oh, thank you very much, Rachel. And if you know anyone who's in the Northern Territory or Alice Springs, you'll know that there is a state funeral on Thursday for Nana M.K. Turner, who was a revered elder and an identity of the Northern Territory, and she's been given a state funeral. So it's a big week for everyone on Arrernte country, and we think of everyone during their sorry business. Well, this is usually the time that we get you to turn your phones off or make sure it's on silent so we can't hear it. But we do want you to turn to your phone, actually, because this is quite an interactive town hall information session for the Voice to Parliament. There's a QR code on the program handed to you on the way in, or there's one on the screen if you are streaming with us from home. If you are joining us from the live stream or a laptop, then use your mobile or click the link in the chat. But if you're joining from your mobile, then the link will be in the chat and you can click directly through to the website. This will mean that you're still listening to the audio, but you can use the interactive tool on your phone's browser. So jump on there now and let us know you're good to go by hitting the heart button and standing by for further questions. So let's do a little practice and show us how. They're the little hearts going there. Very good. Everybody's right on the money. All right, let us know how well informed you think you are about the Voice to Parliament before we even begin our discussion. If you're coming in pretty cold and you're starting from scratch with your learning journey, then give us a 1. But if you think you know enough that you should be up here on the stage telling everybody else, then give us a 5.
That's everybody, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. That's right, Tony. All right. And while those numbers are coming in, a big thank you to the Biennale of Sydney for putting the invitation out there to everyone, and for Belvoir Street Theatre for allowing us to have this wonderful venue. And thank you for everyone for coming out on a cold and wet evening. We really appreciate it, and we think that you're going to get so much out of it that you will be happy that you came. So we're settling on 3.3 understanding of what the referendum is all about. So that's pretty good, actually. You know enough to kind of have a conversation about it. But let's see if we can make some improvements on 3.3. All right. So what is The Voice? Well, the most big ideas have a foundational story. And for The Voice, this is the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So Jade, I'm going to give it to you now. How did we get to this point?
Okay, well, I think it is really important for us to go back for a moment and have a look at what's happened before now. And, you know, Aunty Norma, and thank you for that beautiful welcome, Aunty Norma. You talked about, you know, on the shoulders of giants, we do this sort of work. And I think culturally we look at that a lot. You know, there is a real sequence in how we learn and how we get our cultural authority, and even to pick up movements like this. You know, we have different roles to play at different times. So it's really important to look back and acknowledge, and here's our first myth that we're going to bust tonight. Albo didn't write this. The Uluru Statement, our foundational document, which we will talk about more in a moment, Albo didn't write it. You know, he's often joked, you know, if only, you know, it's a really amazing document. But it's important to say that the Uluru Statement that we all now know and love, it came from petitions before. It came from decades, generations of conversation and learning to get to this point. So I just want to point out a couple of petitions or statements or invitations, if you like. There's been more, but I'm hoping behind me, yes, the William Cooper petition back in the 30s, you know. So there is some confusion out there because the announcement about the referendum came with the election. There is confusion that the idea of the Uluru Statement and this voice concept came at the same time, but it didn't. You know, here's a petition back in the 30s of one of our elders asking to be heard, wanting to have a say. Have a look at the 1960s. Now, today is actually the 60th anniversary of the Yirrkala Bark petitions. So they've come from where you just were. They came from Yirrkala, and basically the Yolngu people of that area were getting really worried about what was happening with mining and not being able to have a say over what was happening to their country. They'd seen it happening elsewhere, and so petitioned the Parliament. It didn't work, but this is a foundational step of what's brought us here today. Then in the 70s, the Larrakia people, so I live on Larrakia country now, the Larrakia people petitioned the Queen. And in the 80s, and people in this audience are probably aware of this one, the Barunga Statement was given to Bob Hawke. And that one was slightly different in that he, as the Prime Minister at the time, he accepted it. He was able to deliver on some of it and not other parts. But we give him a big A for effort. Now, what we've learnt from that, so two things I want you to take away from this part of what I'll say is, one, this is not a new thing. We've wanted to be heard for a really long time, and we've asked in all different ways. Two, what we learnt from those experiences is petitioning a king or a queen, or Parliament even, doesn't bring us to where we want to be. The very, very big difference with what we're all doing together right now is that the Uluru Statement invites you all, us all, to walk together. So the invitation is to the Australian people, and you'll hear that shortly if you haven't already heard it. But that is the key thing. It's a key difference in the success of it. We will do this together, but it's also the key bit where it brings us together. We're on this journey already together, just the simple fact that you're sitting here with us tonight. So really, really important to remember that we're not asking a king or queen or a parliament. We're asking you, and you're asking your friends and your family, and that's how we're going to get it done.
Thank you, Jade. That was really well explained. Well, have you heard the Uluru Statement from the Heart? Have you read the Uluru Statement from the Heart? Well, we are in for an absolute treat because one of the best people I know to read the Uluru Statement is Nardi Simpson, and we're going to invite Nardi to read it for us now. And while Nardi is reading it, if you would like to get out your interactive tool once again and let us know how it makes you feel when you're reading it, we'll throw up some of those key words on the big screen afterwards.
We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did, according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion. The ancestral tie between the land, or Mother Nature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom remain attached thereto and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished and coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise? That peoples possessed a land for 60 millennia and this sacred link disappears from world history in merely the last 200 years? With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionally, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. They will walk in two worlds and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967 we were counted. In 2017 we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future.
It's such a beautiful read. Thank you very much, Nardi. Tony, you're someone with an eye for statements of the truth. How carefully crafted is this statement from the heart? And how does it make you feel every time you hear it?
Yes, I was working in Darwin at the time that the Statement from the Heart was released. I was working as co-senior counsel assisting the Dondale Royal Commission. And I was meeting every day with young people who were incarcerated, or some of them had moved on into the adult prison, and I was getting them ready and then taking them through their evidence in a Royal Commission. And when I saw on I think it was the Saturday that the Statement from the Heart had been released, it filled me with a sense of pride and joy that they'd been able to capture something that was really deeply profound about us, and yet it invited everybody else to come along. And I have since given a lot of thought to that, because part of the Uluru Statement speaks to our connection at a deep spiritual level with our country. It's something that I know intimately. It's something that is very hard to put into words. But the expression that we come to when we'll return thither is something I really remembered. And part of the memory of it is that way back in law school, in probably 1986, I studied public international law. And one of the cases we studied was the Western Sahara advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. And that description of First Peoples' connection with country comes from the submissions to that International Court of Justice hearing. And it was said in relation to Spain moving into the Western Sahara and claiming sovereignty over the Sahrawi country. And the president of the Supreme Court of Zaire said these words, that this is the land we come from, and this is the land when we die we will return thither. And that word thither sticks in your head, doesn't it? Because you don't hear it every day. And I remembered that word, and I remembered the sentiment of it. And I was at law school at the time, and so we were learning this in public international law, but at the same time, the most up-to-date case was the Malurpum and Nabalco decision, the Gove case, where Justice Blackburn said, it's not so much that the Aboriginal people of Eastern Arnhem Land own the country, but the country owns them, and therefore applying this old English decision, Cooper and Stewart, the doctrine of terra nullius continues to apply, and I cannot recognise their rights. And that was the law when I went to law school. And so what has happened is that phraseology of returning thither, returning back to our land when we die, ended up in the Mabo decision. And Justice Brennan quoted that section of the International Court of Justice 1975 decision in the Mabo decision. And when I read it in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, I thought, man, that's digging deep for some power. And it's really powerful for me to read that the authors were telling everybody, this is where we're from. We don't come from anywhere else. We're not going to any other place. This is where we're from. And so it meant a great deal to me at that level, but I thought it was a really genuine and honest attempt to try and find a path for us and the rest of the country forward into some different future from the one we've got, because the one we've got doesn't work.
Thank you, Tony. Gosh, I've never heard it explained like that, and I really appreciate that. And this is how everyone in the room and everyone streaming feels about the statement. The phrase "thither" is around the foundations of the Uluru Statement. But Jade, the statement didn't just write itself. How was it created? How many years did it take, and how many discussions, and who in each state, and how did it work?
Yeah, okay. So we looked at before the petitions that came before, and then the next part of the story, if you fast forward to 2015, and I won't spend long on this, but this is really interesting, that a meeting was called in 2015 by the Prime Minister and the opposition leader at the time, and it was the... What was it being called at the time? The referendum... No, the Recognition Council.
Referendum Council?
Yeah, Referendum Council, thank you. Came together, 39 Indigenous leaders came together, and basically the question was put, how would you like to be recognised? How do we take this forward? We've talked about this a lot. How do we take it forward? What happened from there was a series of dialogues that took place across the country, over in the Torres Strait Islands as well. And for the first time, it was well resourced, simply meaning that people could come together and people who aren't always heard. So, certain people find their way to a microphone, and it's quite simple. But, you know, I've worked quite a number of years in remote areas of the Northern Territory. It's really hard to get together and have a meeting. So without resourcing, it's near impossible to hear how people think about things. So there were 13 official dialogues. Obviously, a lot of conversation happened outside of that as well. A lot of meetings happened with families and with the representatives. And those meetings were held over a couple of days. Now, one whole day was taken up with civics, talking about, you know, the nuts and bolts of it, and then saying, you know, what's important in your areas? How do you want to approach this? That huge amount of information was taken to the Constitutional Convention in 2017. It was distilled, it was beautifully poured over, and lots of different opinions and solutions were tabled. And what came out was the Uluru Statement. And I think, let's be clear about this, because this is something else that keeps coming up. There were 270 people that went to, you know, delegates that went along to the convention. A very, very small number, and I wasn't there, but my understanding is from people who were there that about 7 people left the room before the Uluru Statement was read. And that's pretty usual for pretty big, intense meetings like that. They went outside and did their own thing and didn't actually... So it's not that they heard the Uluru Statement and didn't agree with it, they didn't stay for the reading. And I think 20 in total didn't sign. The rest of the delegates stood, received the statement, and I'm told there was, you know, standing acclamation and tears of joy. I think just probably relief and joy at the same time. And people signed that beautiful canvas, and, you know, that Jacobpa, that story, that artwork was gifted to go along with that beautiful statement. So really, really meaningful.
Thank you for that. So dialogues in every state and territory, the delegates were in effect representatives of those dialogues that were there in 2017 when it was read out, and just a really, really beautiful statement and an incredible day. Nardi, is it important to go back to the statement and to kind of block out the noise that is around this discussion just at the moment, and go back to the statement, to the very roots, the foundation of it all, and to read it and just to get a renewed appreciation, a reaffirming, if you like?
I think it's a direct conversation and a request for relationship from generations of people, as you were saying, to you, Mom. And, you know, once you have statements and TV cameras and all that, it starts to become, there's a whole nother machine that can co-opt that language. But to me, it says it's from the heart. The heart. From one heart to another. And I think that's the thing that's really important to remember. And, you know, sitting on stage in this deadly theatre, even more so now, amplifying that spiritual, conceptual and offering of connection from our communities to the greater Australian community. That's what it is. And everything else is noise. It's about me and you. And me and you and me and you. And my dad and my sister and them and you. It's about people, not about frameworks. The people will make. The people will make the way. And I think we just need to really engage and re-engage with each other at the moment.
We're going to get into the ask of the referendum in a few moments. But Tony, what's involved in changing the Constitution? The Uluru Statement calls for the voice to be enshrined in the Constitution, which means that we need to go to a referendum. So what's the process?
So the Constitution, of course, is the document which forms the Federation and sets out the rules for the states and territories to work with each other and the Commonwealth. It's a very dry document in that sense, and it's a little bit outdated. Modern constitutions include the protection of rights for citizens against the state, and we don't have that. But it served a purpose. It served a purpose when the colonies were coming together to form this federation. It didn't include us, but it provided in section 128 of the Constitution. Put your hand up if you've read section 128. There's a few.
We actually have a hand up. You've read the Constitution?
I asked the same question in rooms full of lawyers, and you'd be surprised how few have put their hand up. Anyway, section 128 provides that basically you need a double majority in order to change the Constitution in Australia. That means you need an overall majority, so there's 25 million, but I don't know the number of voters, so whatever the number of voters is, we need 50% of that to create the first majority, and then we need a majorities in the majority of states. Territories aren't counted, so in the majority, the second majority, so that all the people voting in the Northern Territory, for instance, their vote will only go towards the overall majority. Whether there's a majority or not in the Northern Territory doesn't matter. Similarly in the ACT and Jervis Bay territories. It's a difficult constitution to change. There have been 44 attempts. This will be the 45th, and there have been 8 changes. Some of you will remember the 1999 proposal for change to create a republic and to insert a preamble recognising Aboriginal people. It's very difficult, and because of the double majority, and I think probably Australians' preference for the status quo, there's been very few successful referenda in the past.
Tony, can you explain to us how big the Constitution is versus how extensive the legislation is that enacts the Constitution? So I guess the Constitution versus legislation. Like how big is the Constitution in terms of a document?
You're not speaking literally. It's 128 sections at the moment, and the new section will be 129 when it's passed into law. But in terms of its operation, it sets the rules by which the federal parliament operates, and so it says how the federal parliament's set up, that there'll be a House of Representatives and a Senate, but it also provides for the division of responsibility between the states and the Commonwealth. So when this federation was set up, the states agreed to pass over certain rights to the Commonwealth to operate at a national level. So they've got defence, and they ended up getting tax, and they've got a number of other rights which are set out in the Constitution.
Do you need to know the detail to change the Constitution, or is it the legislation that comes afterwards that provides the detail? So
it's a broad document that sets up the framework for then the legislation to be made, and an example of that is that prior to the 67 referendum, the Constitution provided for the Commonwealth in section 51(26) to make laws for any race except Aboriginal people. And that's because when the Constitution was created, the states all wanted to keep the laws for themselves about Aboriginal people, and that was changed. The reference to Aboriginal people was changed so that the Commonwealth could then make laws for Aboriginal people. And so the laws that existed before that were all the Aborigines protections laws that kept our families locked up on reserves. And in fact, the only thing that changed that was the Commonwealth made the Racial Discrimination Act, which was passed in 1975. But those laws that the states could make about locking up Aboriginal people continued. It continued into the 70s in Queensland. And so once the law was passed through that 67 referendum, the Commonwealth could make laws about us. And they passed the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage protection legislation. They passed the Native Title Act They passed the Aboriginal Councils and Associations Act, which allowed us to set up our own organisations. But before that, they couldn't do it because the powers existed with the state. That sounds like a lot of detail, but it looks like a very informed crowd, I must say.
Yeah. With the Constitution and with all the laws that we have, with the levels of the High Court, the Federal Court, and all the courts and the Parliament that we have, where does First Nations sovereignty sit with all of that? Does any of that impact sovereignty of First Nations people? And the amendment that is being proposed, which we're going to get to the actual question in a moment, will that impact First Nations sovereignty?
So the short answer is no. The long answer is very long. I'll try and give you the medium answer. Essentially, Indigenous First Nations sovereignty comes from our original occupation of this land. And so in Australia, we've had something like 478 native title determinations across the country. And in each of those determinations, the Federal Court of Australia has had to be satisfied that each of those claim groups, First Nations, have got a society that's continued since before the British arrived, continued to the present day. That they've got a system of laws and customs that's continued to the present day, that pre-exists the British. That they've got a society and system of religion and belief that continues to the present day. And so my grandmother's country in southwest Queensland, the High Court, the Federal Court found that we had that in 2014, Kalalea people. In that Western Sahara decision I talked to you about earlier, the International Court of Justice found that the people of this Western Sahara, the Sahrawi, had those same things, had a continuing society, had their own system of laws and customs, had their own beliefs. And so our Aboriginal people saying, well, they're no different to us. This is our country, we're the only ones that can speak for here, and this is what our sovereignty means for us. And it's never gone away, and we still say that, and we're going to keep saying that. And so the question is whether at law, being involved in this referendum is going to affect that ancient ancestral tie. And my view is absolutely not, because we're not being asked at a First Nation level whether we cede anything to the Crown. To do these state-to-state relations, there has to be an express agreement. It can't be done by stealth. It can't be done by ignorance. It can't be done by mistake. It has to be an express agreement. You have to say, well, we give our sovereignty to you in exchange for this or that. And that's what's called cession or ceding sovereignty. And so that's not happening. And our participation in saying, well, we should change the rules of this country just to allow us to have this little part, especially in the knowledge that we're saying we need to discuss treaties later, means of course we're not ceding sovereignty. Of course we're not saying, well, we're all good Aussies now. We are expressing ourselves as sovereign people by being in this, and we're saying this is our country. We want to work with you, and for the better of us all.
And you've had your native title recognised in 2014. Did you?
My grandmother's country.
Oh, congratulations! That's awesome. Jade, I'm going to go to you now. Thank you, Tony, for explaining that to us. What is the ask? So what are we going to be asked to vote on?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the short version because it is short. We're asking to be recognised in the Constitution, and we're asking to be heard on matters that affect us. When we get the yes across the line, what the amendment will look like is simply 92 new words in the Constitution. I'm going to read it to you, okay? In recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice may make representations to the Parliament and the Executive Government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. So again, the ask is really simple. We want to be recognised and we want to be heard. And those 92 words that would be introduced into our constitution will mean that body, that voice that is established will have security. Because the other lesson we've learnt when I talk about, lessons from the past, is we've learnt that if we were just to purely legislate, because we've stood up representative bodies without government, we've gotten up and done it ourselves. We've also stood up when it's been the appetite of government. But what we've found is that we are then vulnerable to hostile governments, election cycles, all manner of things. So it's really important for us to enshrine this voice in the Constitution. That was one of our biggest learnings there.
So enshrining it makes sure that it's permanent, because we've had bodies in the past, ATSIC, the NAC, other advisory groups, NACC, that have been advisory groups. And Tony, just quickly, when we've had those voices to Parliament or those advisory groups, what's happened to the gaps? Have they been? Were they closer than they are now, and are they wider? Would you say, because we don't have an organisation like ATSIC, like those other organisations?
Narelda's trying to tell me to be a little bit quicker. Yes, okay.
Because actually, if you've got some more questions, then please go to the app and ask us those questions, and we'll put them to you. But we're going to be a bit more interactive shortly, so we're keeping you on your toes.
So, look, my experience and years involved in working with and for my community and communities tells me that following the referendum in '67, there was a real sense of hope and power and willingness to do things. And so I wasn't there, I was a little bit young, but I started at the Aboriginal Legal Service in 1983, and it was a sense of, we can do this for ourselves. We can find pathways for ourselves to make our lives better and to be in control of our own existence and destiny. And ATSIC came along in 1989, and that was real. And Mabo happened in 1992. It was real. It was real. We had the native title legislation. We had the Indigenous Land Fund, and we also had the social justice package, and the ATSIC and the Reconciliation Australia and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands Social Justice Commission put all in these fantastic submissions into this social justice package that was the third limb of the response to Mabo. And we were walking forward to this real sense of determination, our self-determination and our own power. And, included in those submissions by all of those three groups that I talked about was the request for constitutional change in 1990. This was in 1996, 97. The coalition government dumped the social justice package after it got into power. And we went, in my view, into a period where the notions of self-determination were buried and were kicked to the curb. And then ATSIC was disbanded in 2006. And then in 2015, I think this was the most, we had the intervention in 2007, but the worst thing, and I don't mean to undermine the seriousness or diminish the pain that mob have felt in the Northern Territory, but the worst thing from my perspective was the Indigenous advancement strategy that was brought in 2015, because all the money was taken out of our communities, all the organisations we'd set up and all the empowerment things that we were doing to empower our communities, all that money was taken out, and it was put out to tender, and a lot of different non-Indigenous groups got all those funds, and people were reduced to poverty and begging government. And so, you have communities in the north of Australia who have to have power cards and they pay for their power at extortionate prices, and their power goes off. And they have to live through summers without heat, and their fridges, all their food goes off. Who else would put up with that? And you have communities where their kids are being taken away at huge rates. Youth suicide, all these things. And my view is we have gone backwards in our communities. We have gone backwards. It's easy for people like me who have figured out how to walk both sides of this line, but for people in our communities, it's been terrible. And what this whole thing is about for me is saying we want to be in a bit of control of our own destiny here. We want to be able to set our own path. And so I think it's such an important moment for the whole country to accept that we can actually take hold of our own destiny and go after it ourselves, and having some trust in us and some belief that we are equal enough to go out and chase the things and do it for ourselves. Because at the moment it feels like there's a lot of people who don't think we're good enough to do it ourselves. It's a terrible thing. It's like going back to the 60s. Can't believe it.
After everything that we've heard already, it just seems really simple, doesn't it? Aunty Pat Anderson on 7:30 said the other night, I just feel silly sitting here talking about this. It's so simple. But this is what we have to do. We have to swat away the arguments, constantly defend something that is so, so basic. The debate has been so vigorous. And, the Prime Minister did say that the mental health of First Nations people was going to be impacted during this debate, and I think it definitely has. And these are the sorts of questions that people are constantly asking. So we've put up this slide. Please go to your interactive tool and let us know in the discussions that you have had with your friendship group, with your loved ones, in your own mind. Please rate these 1, 2, 3 and 4 in order of importance, in order of the amount of times that it comes up in the conversations, and we would like to address that in the order that you think. But just on that mental health aspect, Nardi, how have you been going, and how have the people in your circles been going? And, when you have discussions with people, how are you finding it?
It's hard because it means so much to us, and we want to show up in the right way so that people can engage and feel confident in the questions that are being put to them. But we also find we need to hold on to each other. And so then it's a balance between seizing this moment, like Rachel's talking about, this generational moment, and being as strong as we can in this moment so we can make a shift, but also making sure that we're then able to walk through that open door and to take the opportunity ourselves and not die trying.
The number one is, will it make a practical difference? Tony, you pretty much addressed this, but Jade, you've had a lot of discussions. I mean, you just said you had told me earlier that you had a discussion with the taxi driver on the way because of your yes. I imagine because of the yes T-shirt. Does that start a lot of conversations for you?
He asked me what play I was seeing here tonight because I gave him the address. But look, I'll take any opening whatsoever.
Making a practical difference, is that something that people ask you a lot?
Yeah, of course, it's what people want to know, and it's what. So before I started, coming down to the city and having these sort of conversations, I was having these conversations all over Arnhem Land. And so that's the first place that we started going, will this make a practical difference? Because when we were trying to shape the conversation, before the current Prime Minister even said we were going to referendum, we as different mobs were having the conversations about, well, what is going to work for us? If we get this big moment, how are we going to do this? What will be the best way to, we don't want to waste this opportunity. So the practical difference conversation for me started in Arnhem, and I was sitting in a community like Tony was describing, where you've you look around in some communities and there is a visible absence of men and youth. And that's the remnants of the intervention. We don't have enough time to go into that tonight, but these are some of the things you notice when you sit and when you sit and you're quiet enough and you spend enough time in community, you see these things and you start to wonder why it is so. And so just things like that, you start to talk about what needs to change, you know, because I was working for the Australian government, so I had a 20-year public service career that I happily skipped away from, and not because I didn't love the work, but I happily skipped away because the deal I'd made with myself is if we were going to referendum, I wanted to be ungagged. I wanted to be able to speak to you all exactly like this. So I made that exciting decision to leave a 20-year career and come and do this and yarn with you all. But the reason, you know, of me being so for this is because trying to run those messages up and down the Stuart Highway, and we say like down the track, which is, you know, like the length of Australia, trying to get the message into Canberra that's come from Arnhem, and just seeing how wrong that can go all the time. Because the assumptions we make, even the assumptions we make in Darwin, but particularly in Canberra, of why things are in community, they're so wrong, and we can't keep doing that. We've got to listen. You know, and I just want to really quickly share a story with you to illustrate this point. Is that, and it keeps coming back to me, this story, talking to a father about schooling. So in my head, I'm having an education conversation. This is a conversation that the Department of Education would want to hear about, because school is at the forefront of it. But where we landed by the end of the conversation was a message I really needed to take to someone in infrastructure. Because what he explained to me was that to get his kids to school every day, he was travelling an hour on a rickety road that was wrecking a car he couldn't afford to maintain anyway. And he was paying almost $4 a litre for petrol, and he was unlicensed, because it's really hard to get a licence in remote communities and keep one. And so all these things stacked up against him getting his kid to school. My kids walk outside in Darwin and they get on a bus, and I have nothing to do with it because they're big, great kids now. But the effort he went to put his kids, like get his kids to school, the data read, his kids weren't going to school, they probably should put some more funding into the school. Nothing about the road, the car, the other issues that he was really up against. But 10 minutes with him, that's what I learnt. So it's that practical, giving people a say on what happens with their own lives and the things that they need change so that they can have better outcomes. Because we know, you know, communities hold their own solutions, and we just need the space and the vehicle, which is the voice, to unlock those solutions. And that's just not just in remote communities. You know, I've just been home in Queensland with my mob. We're Garang people on the east coast of Queensland. Same conversation. You know, what would you say if you could talk to Canberra? And it all comes out.
And the same thing for Uluru, Perth, where I come from. There are so many First Nations people living in poverty, living under the poverty line in the suburbs of Perth, and yet half an hour's drive is Billionaires Row, where the richest people in this country that have made their money from resources live in the same city. There is a disproportionate distribution of wealth, and there are so many of our people living in poverty, and they are just struggling to survive. And when you live in poverty, you draw the attention of authorities and child protection authorities, and there are 22,000 First Nations people, First Nations children who are living in state care. Half of all children in state care are First Nations children, half, 22,000. There are stolen generations that are continuing now. And because they are families that are just trying to survive. The bar to take children away is so low, but the bar to get the children back is so high. It is so high. These families are struggling and they just want their children back, but it's the poverty cycle. So it's all the things that you've just spoken about, Jade, which, I mean, you would think that governments, that you could just tell the government and that they know that these things are happening, but they've got party lines that they need to toe. You know, that they don't have to listen. And with this advisory group, they don't have to listen to the advice, but when it is transparent and when the whole country knows that this is the advice that is being given by First Nations people, and I guess that's the key part, that that the Voice of Parliament will hopefully have some transparency so that we can see what advice is being listened to or not by the government. At Garma, I'm wearing the Garma t-shirt because I just came back from there a couple of weekends ago. The Prime Minister met with the 13 clan leaders of the Yolngu people. And he said in front of the TV cameras, the 13 clan leaders, they didn't talk about the building of nuclear submarines. They were talking about the need for housing, employment, education, health. They're the serious things that will close the gaps for our people. I mean, the advice that is going to be given from this Voice to Parliament is advice that is going to save lives and prolong lives of the 3%.
That's exactly right, and that's where we're here. And I guess, in this room, I think it's really important, you're coming on this journey with us and you actually have an active role to play, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But what I just wanted to pick up there is get that message out there, because perhaps people aren't feeling the urgency like some of us because they don't realise it's a life or death thing. They don't realise the harm that if we continue to get this policy, this legislation wrong, if we continue to have this relationship that's not balanced and correct, people are being harmed. So I actually need you all to go and tell these stories in your own ways. And there's beautiful stories, like Aboriginal storytellers are, you walk into any bookshop at the moment and there are just so many stories captured on the page. So I'm encouraging you to find out what's going on outside of your line of vision, because you're probably going to be quite shocked. And it's not about shocking people into action. It's just about being real, that we've got this opportunity now and we've got to grasp it. We have to.
Now, the second question, do all First Nations people support it? Tony?
I hope not. That's the way our societies work. I mean, it's the way that the broader society works, but I'm a native title lawyer. I've probably worked with 40 or 50 different mobs over the years. I've been to I don't know how many meetings with various native title groups over big and small decisions, and always when there's a big decision to be made, there is a group of people who runs the contrary argument. I've seen it, and I before the Voice came along, I developed my own theory as a lay sociologist or something. I just thought, how can it be that every time there's a big decision to be made, there's always people that will argue against it? I've never been to one where it's been unanimous. And I came to the conclusion that it must be part of our culture. It must be a deep cultural thing that in order for us to make big decisions, we've got to have contradictors. We've got to have people who are testing the soundness of the decision. And you've got to remember that we've been in decision-making systems for millennia. And I think that I think that exists as a way of it being for us. When there's big decisions, there's got to be people who are testing it. Now, the fact that people are opposed to it also speaks to our resistance. Many of us, myself included, have been fighting this battle for years. It's what we've grown up doing. It's what I've grown up doing. And it's very hard for us to trust anything. Our trust has been broken so many times, and every time we have some transaction with the government, we tend to get ripped off, is the truth of the matter. So people are cautious about those things. There were always going to be many of our own mob who would oppose this for fear or for feeling some cultural obligation to be the ones that oppose it and make sure we're making the right decisions. But what I'm pretty much buoyed by in all of this is that mostly when I'm talking with people, and I travel a lot, travel an awful lot with my work and now with a lot of the voice stuff, people are saying, yes, we want to do this thing, we need to get it done, and we need to make sure that the people understand we're still here and we've got our law and custom, we want to run our own lives. And every native title group I've worked with, every one of them, they all talk about running their own business. They want to run their own show, and they say, we know what's best for our kids. We know how to fix our problems. Nobody listens to us. And so I'm comfortable that we've got a lot of overwhelming support amongst our mob.
80% apparently. 80%. I heard Marcia Langton say 80%. That's reliable statistics.
Yeah, and look, to get 80% agreement on anything, the rest of Australia don't get that come election time. So I'm buoyed by that. The polls have consistently shown that, 80%, over 80% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people polled agreed. And given the sample size and the fact that we're only 3 and a bit % of the population, it was actually quite a great sample. But what I will say, I try not to focus too much on polls and more on what I'm picking up from people. And in all my travels, even prior to this, and like you're saying, Tony, people have been saying different iterations of this forever. I'd plainly say, well, what do you want me to take back to Canberra? I'm going back to Canberra soon. What do you want me to say? They need to listen. We need to be heard. My mob, through our native title, we want to determine this. We want to be able to run this our way. All different ways we've done that. So there's a huge commonality that we want to be heard. And the minute it started getting political, a lot of family went, whoop. And now we've taken those conversations back into community where they belong. We've gone back to a really grassroots campaign. And I can tell you the support, that's what's keeping my well-being at the moment, is that on-the-ground support.
And Tony, you did such a good job of explaining sovereignty and how sovereignty won't be impacted at all in this process. And then you have the so-called progressive no's who think that the voice isn't going to go far enough, that they want more than it just being an advisory group because of the mistrust that you spoke about. And then the next sort of category of no's amongst First Nations people are those who think treaty is more important. Can we talk about treaty just for a moment? Because it's also an issue that we've been hearing about a lot from the Conservative No campaign, that somehow the voice will be a Trojan horse for ramming treaty, which will then be a land grab and lead to other things that will take away from other people, which kind of addresses, will it create special rights for one group of Australians? So if native title hasn't done that, would a voice to Parliament do that?
Provide for a land grab.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
I spoke at a community event at Manly 2 weeks ago, and we got into question time, and some fella up the back said, "I want to know whether there's going to be land claims over my yard, my house. I live here just up the road, and I want to know." I just thought, my God. Anyway.
So when you said no, then did he say he was going to vote yes? Because what's he got that cleared up?
Well, I'm not sure that he understood the answer, even though it was very short. He wasn't. Yeah. Well, I will refrain from passing that comment. But anyway, so look, what's happened is that there has been this complete campaign of misinformation, and I try to put myself out on social media to promote the voice, and because I was on the referendum working group, and I get people responding to me all the time on social media. I say, I'll answer your questions, and I get Gus, the gyprocker from Townsville, wants to argue with me about constitutional law. He knows, he read it up, and he knows, and I'm wrong. And then Bill, the web designer from Lithgow, he knows better, and he's arguing with me on social media because he read it on the Advance Australia site or something. And I just, I find it it's very troubling how little people examine the sources of their information. However, back to the question.
You want me to ask it again? Ask it again.
Yes, please.
Treaty. Okay, let's just take a couple of moments dealing with treaty.
Okay.
Can the voice? What order does it need to happen? I mean, the Uluru Statement says treaty, voice, treaty, treaty.
Yeah. So I've got to say this. I was a treaty advocate. I'm a treaty advocate. I was doing papers from about 2012 saying, look, native title's not going to deliver everything that we need. We need to have a system of agreements where that can allow us to move to the next step, and we need a national body to negotiate on our behalf for the national framework in which we can do all these treaty things that need to be done. And I was looking at Canada and I'm thinking, well, this is how it needs to work. And so when the voice, the Uluru Statement came along, I thought, fantastic. Yes, it's setting up that national body that can engage with government about what the framework ought to look like. And yes, it's appropriate that be done up front because the treaty process is a long process. In British Columbia, the place we look to for the modern treaty process, the treaties there are taking 20 to 30 years to negotiate between First Nations and the British Columbian government and the Canadian government. And so we know that these things take a long time. I'm hoping that we can do it a bit quicker. They've done a lot of the groundwork there. We can do it a bit quicker, but it's still going to take a long time. And so the idea of having the treaties first and the truth telling first and then the voice referendum after means that we will miss this opportunity that we have now. And the reality is that we haven't had a parliament that's willing to take a voice to the population for 10 years. And when we don't know when we will get it again. And so this is the time. It has to happen. It's going to happen now. We have to do it. This is the way it's going to go. And the treaty stuff will happen regardless of what happens with the referendum.
And the misinformation out there, the Conservative No campaign have really pushed this narrative of treaty leading to some kind of a land grab, or with feeding into the fear and scaring people, and that narrative also led to something that we heard just in the last couple of weeks about the Uluru Statement being more than one page, being 26 pages. And it's just, when we talk about will it unite or divide us as a nation, what is actually dividing us at the moment, Jade or Nardi?
It's most certainly disinformation. That is dividing us. Because this really riles me up. but seriously, it's absolutely the disinformation. Because again, what I'm seeing in events like this, all across the country, and we will get to question time, when people get to ask their questions and they've got an open heart and mind and they're actually waiting for the answer, and we can give the answer, because like we've said, the ask is simple. We've got the 92-word draft of what the constitutional change would look like. Like we do have the answers for you. So it's actually a really beautiful conversation when had with the right intention. And I'm finding, we're doing all this beautiful storytelling and sharing, and I'm seeing all this unity face to face across Australia. Where the division comes through is just the false stuff that's put into the media and people just want to run with it. It's a very small but loud group. And so let's use that as an example. We all know the Uluru Statement is one page. We're all very familiar with it. Most people across the country have had some sort of, heard it, seen it, what have you. It's been around since 2017. It is one page, and it's amazing what they have fit onto that page. The rest of it, and I ended up going and having a little sticky beak, because the funny thing about that as well is all these people going, 26 pages, but they didn't bother to follow the link and have a look at them, because it so clearly sets out what those pages are that they're talking about. So when I spoke before about the dialogues that happened and this great, really extensive and inclusive consultation, there's notes from that. And it's really nicely labelled up the top, like Broome dialogue, Darwin dialogue. And so, it forms a report. So I said that those meetings were resourced. We know what that means. You've obviously got to come up back with a report. We like to keep records. That's a brilliant thing to do. That's what's there. And there's no secret. Those documents have existed for years. They've been available for years. But that one page Uluru Statement is the foundational document of this movement. So it's no surprise that those who want to distract come in and distract around that document, but we've just got to cut through it.
Nardi, when you wake up and see another distraction, what do you think? Do you think that we're being effective in spreading the right, the truth here, and that they've got to muddy the waters, and does it kind of say to you that we're sort of winning? If they've got to think up, be more creative in their distractions?
I have faith in people, and I have faith in our people because we know how to navigate this stuff too. So if you can get close to us, you'll hear the truth, and we'll make you feel something, and we'll engage you in a way that may just move you in a way you've never felt before. So it's a shame, but I do have faith that if we can get close to each other, we can sweep all that away, And our people are really good at that too. Because where I'm from, that's how we like to get on. We like to be close and exchanging and making sure that you're feeling not just what I'm saying, but you're receiving the way that I'm saying it because I'm making it for you. So if we can get close to people, all that other stuff can be navigated, disregarded.
Something that I always like to remind myself is that when you put First Nations people first, everyone benefits. And so all of those concerns and all the fear, it will just be allayed when when you send to First Nations people and you address all the issues that the Voice of Parliament will address, everyone will benefit because it will be a better country that we live in, and we're looking after the most vulnerable in our society. We're coming to the final stages. We thank you so much for your attention. There's a recurring question, Nardi, from this particular audience as to the importance of the arts and the arts community in the referendum process. How important are we?
Yeah, we're brave. We're brave. You wouldn't get on one of these things if you weren't brave. And that's why I think creative people are wonderful leaders, because we can follow, they can walk down there and be brave that way, and we can follow that. I'm really grateful to belong to a making community that challenges themselves in that way. And by challenging self, showing, really giving a gift to other people. So for me, and also, black creatives, we've been truth-telling for a really long time. I come from a line of truth tellers. I stand on stages of truth being told for a long time. So it is actually happening. We're not reinventing the wheel here. If we follow some smart fellas and people that inspire us, we all get to share in this amazing moment. So for me, creatives, by being who they are and doing what they do and just having that sense of courage can really fill a moment and a space that I think we can all kind of, follow through with.
And talking about creating those moments, I mean, Jade, you sat next to Alan Joyce. How long ago was it? A year ago.
I think it was about a year ago.
And we see the logo on a plane today.
You're welcome.
We have the Women's World Cup at the moment. Football Australia declared their support for the Voice to Parliament last year. And we're having the moment of the World Cup, and it is a moment to seize on as well with the Matildas. Like, everybody loves the Matildas, but the Football Australia, who manages the Matildas, support the Uluru Statement and the Voice to Parliament, which is just incredible. All these things take time, and it starts with a conversation. It starts with a conversation in a taxi, in an Uber. Get your phone out again. Remember, it was at 3.3, your understanding of what the referendum is about. So please let us know, was your understanding enhanced by what you heard this evening? Let us know, do you intend to vote yes? And let us also know if you would like to campaign for yes. Well, that is pretty overwhelming. That's leaps and bounds ahead of where we were at 3.3. So it's hovering about 4.5. That's incredible. And almost all of you intend to vote yes. And 4.2 or so, 4.1 would like to campaign for yes. All right, Jade, how can people get involved?
It's really, really simple. So, first step, visibility. So there's lots of ways that you can show your support, very, very obviously. And also, just to make new friends and start practicing your conversation, wear this to an airport. It really, really works. Yeah. So 2 things happen. You either get someone sitting next to you who's really supportive, wants to really yarn about it, or you get a spare seat. So that's cool too. That hasn't happened. No, but honestly, please pick up a shirt, or there's beautiful badges. I think Aunty Norma's got a great badge. Put your own style to it. Just be really visible, because it starts to feel really good, when you see other people representing, wearing their vote on their sleeve. It's a beautiful thing, and that really brings in that unity. We want you to have conversations. So please leave tonight and just actually go through in your mind everyone you can have this conversation with. If in that process you think, I don't know what to say to them, register with us. Get onto the website, which will probably come up in a moment. It's yes23.com.au anyway, and get on there, register, because we'll actually give you all the resources. We will help you to have those convos. There's some great models like table talks, kitchen table talks. These are tried and tested models that we just know work, and it makes it easy for you. So, yeah, use all our resources. Just have the conversations.
And there are call flutes that you can take home on your way out. There are 30 of them. So first in, first served. In the short amount of time we've got left, a minute or so, I'm going to go through our panellists and ask for some final words. Either you can offer some advice if you needed to talk to someone, and leave one thing about the Voice to Parliament, or you would like to offer your vision for what the morning after the referendum will look like. It's up to you. Tony, what would you like to leave us with?
What I have been saying to people recently is, it's not going to be any skin off anybody else's nose. Nobody's even going to notice it, really. There'll be the occasional issue where we have to go to tough talks, but that's what we need to do when there's a reform to the Native Title Act, or there's a reform to the heritage protection legislation. But for the most part, you won't even know that it exists. It's just in the same way as I would ask any of you who are old enough to remember ATSEC. I know that it's getting on in the tooth. But did ATSEC impact on any of your lives? Did it? It had much more power than the Voice will have. It had funding and programming power. It was making decisions about where money was going. Did it impact on any of your lives? No. But the reality is, for my family, it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to mean that we can talk to the people locally about what things we need to enhance our life and to make our lives rich and full, and things that allow us to fulfil all of our hopes and dreams at the moment, our people are going to jail. Our kids are being taken away. We're dying young. So it's not going to. There's no skin off anybody else's nose. But it means a lot for us.
Thank you, Tony. Nardi.
Status quo isn't working. We can all agree about that. So voting yes is saying this isn't good enough. And we're not happy in this way together. And, you know, I would like to believe that, I know the people I know, but the people that I can get close to and sing or talk into their ear would listen to say, to feel something greater than where we are now.
Jade.
So the day after the referendum, I'm going to have a story to tell. And it's my most important audience. I have 2 Aboriginal teenagers growing up in the Northern Territory, my babies. And I'll either be telling them that morning that we are part of an amazing united nation that has accepted our gift, and they've seen our culture as a gift, and they've stood with us and they've said, yeah, you deserve better than these bloody gaps that we keep, we can't seem to close. We want you to have better. I'll get to tell my children that when they walk out the street that day, they can look with their eyes up and look at people who've stood with us and wanted more for them and wanted to secure their future. Or I'll be telling them the other story. And I just don't even know what those words will be yet.
Thank you, Jade Ritchie, Nardi Simpson and Tony McAvoy. This was a very, very special evening here at Belvoir Street Theatre. A big thanks to the theatre and a big thanks also to the Biennale of Sydney for hosting us this evening. Go forth and tell people what you've learnt tonight and reflect on all of the things that you've heard. And thanks once again. For those of you who would like to hang around, Nardi Simpson is going to get out the ukulele, I think. Do you want it? Just to sing us out. But if you need to leave, please go ahead and leave.
In at least 24 years, seen your face, and we only met twice or maybe 3 times. 3 times in a life, that ain't so much. Do you remember we spent half a day? No words were spoken. My dad had us all in the car, and your brother, he was there too. I want you to know something happened to me then, and I carry you with me and think of you often as someone I wanted to be, but you never got your own chance. Now I wanna say sorry, I need to say sorry, that I had it all. It's just not fair at all, and I know I felt you curl your head, comfort Last time I went up there, I walked through the gravestones, walked past your father. I remember him dearly, named my son after him. Tell him I said thanks for that perfect day. Now you want me to confess to your mother and pass it on that you told me that you said you'll always love her. I know what it is that you want me to do, and I know what it is that you're urging me to, but oh, I'm scared. I know I felt you curl your hand, comfort me, and stroke the back of my head. I swear, although you're gone and buried, I feel you. It's never too late. 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 You said you'll always love her. Too late. Tell him I said thanks for that perfect day. But too late. It's never